Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Rise and Recreate podcast, a space where we explore the courage it takes to rebuild your life from truth, not from survival. Today, I am joined by Kaytlyn, a therapist in training, writer, trauma-informed educator who left a high-earning sales career and a marriage that no longer aligned with her nervous system or her truth. And she is completely rebuilding her life from alignment rather than the survival-driven patterns of wanting to be chosen. Through her personal and professional journey, she embodies the message that healing is not only possible, it's measurable, learnable, and accessible to everyone. And that at any moment we can pause, reorient ourselves, and recreate the life we were meant to live. Very in alignment with our podcast here. Kaytlyn, I am so excited to be speaking with you today. You are such a wonderful example of recreating so many aspects of your life. And before we dive into how you got here, I would love for you to introduce yourself and just tell us a bit about where you are today.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much, Raechel. I'm so happy to be here. And everything that your podcast is about is something that I fully support and relate to. So I'm just very excited. Thank you. And thank you for the great introduction. So to start, where I'm at now. So I'm currently a master's of social work grad student right now at Metro in Denver, which has been just an incredible experience. And right now I'm specializing in complex trauma and evidence-based modalities like dialectical behavioral therapy and attachment science. So I'm doing that, and I'm really just making sure that I'm doing everything that I can to help people know and learn that their nervous system is something that they can totally understand and rebuild, and they can do that in ways that aren't as daunting as how it seems sometimes today, right? When we're trying to go through our healing journey, sometimes it can seem like a lot. And so going through my own healing journey and some of the stuff that you mentioned before just really led me to get to this place where I feel like I cracked a code and I want to share it with people.
I love that. I'm excited to hear more about this code.
Yeah.
So, okay, here's the thing. A lot of times when we are in careers, particularly high earning careers, we get very comfortable, even though our nervous system and everything internally might be fighting against us. So I would love to hear your experience with that. And then what led to the break where you were like, no more, I am completely changing up what I'm doing.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good question. I mean, authenticity is something that's always been really important to me. And anybody who knows me knows this. My mother, she always reminds me of this quote that I'm absolutely obsessed with. I think it was Kurt Cobain. Please, no one butcher me for this. But it was, I'd rather be hated for who I am than loved for who I'm not. And so
Hmm.
that's something I really live by. And as I was going through my life and waking up every day, very stressed out in sales, I felt like my image was good. I felt like people wanted to be around me, I guess, but it wasn't aligning with who I was. And I just kind of felt like it was kind of stealing my soul. So I was stressed out with trying to hit sales goals, not knowing if I was going to have a job next quarter if I didn't hit my goals, right? And then on top of that, I think there's this pressure being a woman in this environment as well. And tell me if you relate to this too, where it's like you have to be put on your makeup, you have to be, attractive and also sexy and putting on, it just felt like I couldn't just exist. I was having to put on a performance to be liked and to be considered successful.
Mhm. Yes, for those of you who don't know, I also just left a tech sales career in January. And the thing that I told everyone was I felt like it was sucking my soul out of my
Yeah.
body. So, yes, I completely relate to this. So, but again, it's hard. It's hard to leave that when you then up level your life because you are making good money, and making that decision is tough. It took a long time for me to finally make the leap and make the decision. So, how was that for you when you were like, okay, I am going to do this? What did that feel like in your body? Excitement, nervous, I'm doing the damn thing. Like, tell us everything.
So what's funny is I'm usually the type of person that's like, I'm doing the damn thing, just rip off the Band-Aid, but it actually didn't happen like this. I felt like the universe was truly like girl, we're not allowing you to like do this anymore. You're going to be forced to do what you've been wanting to do, which honestly I needed, or else I never would have done it. So
Mhm.
I had kind of read between the lines in this job that I had for like 4.5 years. They were kind of moving things around in a way that I didn't feel comfortable with, left and went to another sales position. And it was just a really heavy and toxic environment, unfortunately. And I was so stressed out about it, and I remember I can't believe I did this, but I just told the boss after I'd been there for 9 months, I was like, "Listen, this job isn't aligning with what I was told it was going to be, and I don't really see my place here anymore." I didn't, like, fully quit, but I did. It was just very strange, but it was the first moment where I was like, "I'm just speaking my truth, and I'm going to be honest because keeping this in is, like, eating me alive inside." I was having health
Mhm.
issues, like nothing was working. And also, I was in a marriage that wasn't aligning with me as well. So for me, when this happened, it was like, okay, that job ended up not working out. And then I kept applying for job after job after job. And I was like getting offers, but they weren't like, nothing was aligning with me. And so after several months, I was like, you know what? No more. Like, this is telling me something. I've always wanted to become a therapist. I've always wanted to help people work through trauma. I'm gonna do it. And I did. And I was terrified, and I'd be lying if there still aren't days that I'm still scared, but I at least wake up in the morning without this elephant on my chest.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. So you've mentioned alignment a couple of times, and I would just love for you to explain to people first, maybe an overarching example of what alignment is, and then to you personally, how can you tell if something is in alignment with you or not?
Oh my gosh, I love that. So for me personally, alignment is one of the single most important things we can do for ourselves and for other people, truthfully. And I think that that's something that we don't talk about enough. When you're out of alignment with yourself, you're doing an injustice for yourself. You're teaching yourself that you can't trust yourself to put yourself in situations that are safe and comfortable for you, but you're also drawing in and attracting people that aren't truly aligned with who you really are. And I personally believe that that's not fair to you or to the other people that are in your circle in your life, right? Like, it's just
Mm.
a beautiful thing to be able to say, this is who I am. This, feels good with me. I'm going to do it and watch how things naturally fall in place. I've seen it happen with myself. I'm seeing it happen with some of my most closest girlfriends, and it's beautiful. But to answer your question about what alignment means and how to be honest, like, I think, and especially as women, unfortunately, we are so intuitive. That's not the unfortunate part. That's the good part. We're so intuitive. But the unfortunate part is that we're also battling with what society is telling us to do, what our parents are telling us to do, our friends, what we think we should be doing. Right. And so for me, how I know that I'm not in alignment is when I find myself arguing with myself or trying to justify things with myself, or it's like I'm bargaining with myself. No, you can do this. Like, no, you can find a way around this to do this. When really the truth is you're not supposed to. You're supposed to do what makes you feel calm when you think about it. If you picture walking through that door of whatever the decision is, what is the first thing that you think and what you feel. And for me, that's how I address whether or not I'm in alignment with myself.
I love that, and I agree with the bargaining. It does feel like that. It's a tug of war internally,
Yeah.
where when it's something that I'm excited about, there still is a little bit of, "Oh my gosh, should I be doing this?" But with this excited energy in my body, not this
Mhm.
dense, contracted tugging.
Yeah.
So that's wonderful, and I'm very curious because I do agree that women with our intuition, a lot of times, a lot of empathy as well. It's easy to kind of take on other roles that people project onto us. And so, before you ever got into sales, was there any part of you that maybe wanted to do the therapy thing first back then?
It's so funny you say that, and I didn't even think about talking about that during this podcast, but yes, 10 years ago, I showed back up at my school. First of all, I graduated college and I got a job. My undergraduate degree was actually in criminal justice and criminology, which a lot of people don't expect. Graduated with that, went into my first job outside of school, and I was, like, in this dark little office, and I was like, oh my God, I want to go back to school. What am I doing? I made a mistake. I showed up back at the steps of my school and I was like, I'm going to get my master's in social work, which is so funny. I didn't even know that you could become a therapist as a social worker. I just knew it was the next step for what I wanted to do. I'm very passionate about social justice, humanitarian aid and like standing up for, the underserved and underprivileged. And so that was my natural step. But I was like, that's really expensive. So what I did actually was I moved to Spain and I got a master's of international relations with a focus of peace and security processes and lived in Spain for a little bit. I got a degree. I was much more affordable. But I had always, my mom tells me all the time, ever since I was a little girl, I was like, I want to be a therapist. I want to be a therapist. And it's just beautiful how it played out because there's no way I would have been ready or have had the vision or would have been wise enough to be a therapist at that time. And now I feel like I really have the tools to where I can actually like do what it's meant to do and help people and make a difference.
Mhm. I love that, and I think a lot of times that happens in life where you take a side road,
Yeah,
and you take this roundabout way, but you always end up exactly where you're meant to be
exactly.
if you have the courage to do the thing that you know deep down inside you want to do. And so I'd love for you to talk to us a bit about the courage because it takes a lot to recreate your life and what that looked like and maybe go into a bit of your marriage and it sounds like when you did make this decision some things fell to the wayside. So I'd love for you to go into a bit of that.
Yeah. Oh, courage. I'm just like feeling that in my bones when you say that because I didn't feel like I had the courage. I truly didn't. And I honestly owe it a lot to my support system, my family and my friends and how wonderfully supportive they were throughout this process and my own therapist, obviously, because she was amazing throughout it as well. But it's just having that belief that you just know that there is something better out there for you. There's just this knowing that I had deep down and not the person. It had nothing to do with there's a better person for me. It was more this sense of like I know that I am meant for something different than what I'm doing right now, and it was honestly a grieving process. I
Mm,
think what happened truly was I spent my entire life wanting to be chosen. I was definitely the girl who was like, I'm probably never going to get married. I grew up with complex trauma myself. My childhood was pretty chaotic and I didn't really realize how ingrained it was in everything that I did in my life from who I chose to be friends with, who I chose to date, what I did at work, wanting to, be successful in my job as well, right? And have like fit what society says is okay to show that I was okay, even though I was internally not. And so that's kind of what led me into my marriage. Not anything bad to say about, my ex-partner. He was a wonderful person, but I chose him based on my past, not on my present and who I had become, right? And actually, let me take that back. I didn't actually choose him. I didn't feel like I had the choice. I was chosen and I felt like that was what I had to go with because my goal was to be chosen, right? As I started
mm,
going throughout that process, I realized I get to choose. Like, you get to choose what you want. Like, did you know that? Like, that you also have a choice. And I had done a lot of work on myself before that. I had spent many years, in therapy and also in dialectical behavioral therapy, which is something I'll talk about a lot, very passionate about for healing. And it absolutely changed my life. And I kind of just got to this place where I was like, you've worked so hard to break from these patterns. And I just recognized that I was living in my past. And it was just one of those moments where you just say, enough is enough. Like, enough is enough. It sucks, but you have to do this sort of thing.
mhm. So, for a lot of people, when they are living from their past, I feel like the choices they're making, of course, their nervous system, everything is telling them that it's the safe choice when you're completely right. It is typically based on what you've gone through before you go through this like awakening process of just being curious and like what are my patterns? Where have I been living from my past? And so,
Yeah.
for somebody who's listening to this and they're like, "Oh boy, I am definitely living this safe, comfortable life and I see that light. I know there's something else out there for me, but I am so scared to leave my safety net." What
Yeah.
advice would you have for them?
Oh boy. I mean, that's really tough because I think we all have our different process. And I think that it's really important to honor that we all have our different process. Some people take years to be ready to face that. Some people are ready to do it right away. And I don't think there's any right shoe that fits. But what I will say is that when you start to notice that you are like dying inside a little bit, that and it sounds really dark, but it is, where you just feel this numbness of going through the motions and you're not actually living, nothing is worth that.
Hmm.
There's nothing worth just going through the motions and not actually living. And when you're not living. Um, and so my advice is to just think about the costs, right? Because, and especially too in my marriage, there's a lot of security of having a partner and knowing that there's that safety net there, right? So it's not just emotional security, it's also like physical security and safety. And especially
Hmm.
again, I'm always talking about the women from the female standpoint. No matter how much we've grown, I mean, there's still this sense of like of physical safety being in that sort of partnership, but you have to think about what the costs are. For me, it was chronic illness. I started thinking I had an autoimmune disease. I was taking myself to the emergency room once a month for MRIs. I thought I was absolutely falling apart. So you have to think about what you're actually doing to your physical body and do the research about scientifically what trauma and what suppressing your emotions and how you're feeling does to your body, and that might kind of help take the leap because it affects a lot of different things.
I completely agree. For me, when I was living out of alignment, I started to notice a lot of different things happening within my body too. And just a tool I'd like to give everyone is when I'm making a really, really, really big decision in my life, I like to use the little old lady rocking chair analogy where I picture myself as like a 95-year-old woman sitting in a rocking chair, looking back on my life and thinking, what decision would I have made from that standpoint? And I've made some huge jumps in my life using that, just really like looking
I love
back and
that.
being like, okay, what will I be most proud of myself for when I'm
Mhm.
older and I look back on my life? So you
That's beautiful.
mentioned a type of therapy that you're
Mhm.
really, really passionate about. I would love for you to expand a bit more on that, how it's helped you, why you chose to study it.
Yeah. Yeah. So dialectical behavioral therapy, I think, is so underrated. And unfortunately, I don't feel like a ton of people have heard about it, which is why I'm kind of like the DBT cheerleader now, because truthfully, like it is absolutely life changing. And I want more people to know about it because healing is possible. It's measurable, like we talked about before. And dialectical behavioral therapy. So it's derived from cognitive behavioral therapy. So there's a lot of, we call them like sister therapies. So there's a lot of that, which a lot of people are way more familiar with cognitive behavioral therapy than dialectical behavioral therapy. But dialectical behavioral therapy focuses on radical acceptance, also Buddhist ideology as well, and then this idea of dialectics. So dialectics really means that two things can be true at once. And I know it sounds very just simple, but when you really think about it, a lot of the reasons why people get stuck is because there's this black and white thinking. This decision is all good or this decision is all bad. If I do this, it's all good, it's all bad. There's no absolute truth. And so dialectical behavioral therapy really focuses on this idea of radical acceptance and knowing that there is no absolute truth. There's no absolute right or absolute wrong. And it does really help relieve some of that pressure from people when making decisions. What is
Mhm.
also very important to know about dialectical behavioral therapy that sets it apart from any other type of therapy that I'm aware of is that it's not talk therapy. It's actually a science based course. You are doing homework. There are modules that you're completing, and you have to go through all of the steps. Dialectical behavioral therapy, if you do it the traditional route, that is what it is. And it typically is covering over a period of 6 months to a year of coursework. And so you're really getting something totally different. It's very structured. Now, that doesn't mean that if somebody is not wanting to do the full dialectical behavioral therapy program and they just want to do DBT focused therapy, talk therapy, still recommend it. Totally beautiful. Do it. But it's important for people to know that they have that option.
Hmm. I love that because the more you learn about yourself and the more curious you are about learning about yourself and why do I behave the way I do and why do I make the decisions I make? All of this, you just peel back so many layers and the more you learn, the more you grow, the more you expand, the more your life changes, honestly. And it's a very beautiful progression. So, I would love for you to touch on when we're making big decisions like this, and nothing is ever black or white, there's still the challenges. Even when you make this big decision and you're living in alignment, it's not all butterflies and rainbows. You still have these really hard moments. And are there any tools that you use to get through those hard moments and keep yourself on track?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is perfect. We'll talk about DBT. There's two DBT tools that I want to talk about. Two of many, by the way. And you can also research this online. There's worksheets. And these are things that I still use every day when I want to have a conversation with someone, when I'm trying to make a decision. There's like step-by-step scripts on how to make these decisions and process it. But to answer your question, so there's two DBT skills that I stand by like through and through. One is opposite action. So a lot of times every single person has their initial response to something that feels scary, right? So when you're thinking about making a decision and you're like, okay, my first response is to either fight, flight, fawn, freeze, whatever it is. Dialectical behavioral therapy has a skill called opposite action, which means whatever you would normally do, do the opposite. So I also use this a lot in examples for people, in relationships, right? There's usually always like the pursuer and the withdrawer, right? And there are people who, instantly, if they feel fear, they want to like contact or reach out to that person. The opposite action would say, do the opposite. Pull back a little bit and like sit in the stillness, right? For people who tend to pull back and withdraw or avoid, the opposite action is, why don't you lean in a little bit, dig in a little bit more with that? So I think for people who are trying to make these big decisions, think about what your natural fear response is and challenge yourself to do things a little bit different, a little bit opposite that time around, and just see what happens. Because what it does is it breaks patterns and it retrains those neurotransmitters in your brain to process things differently. But it can't do that unless you're actively breaking the pattern of the cycle, even if it feels weird. So that's opposite action. The other thing that I love to do is something that we like that I call, not that I call, I did not come up with this, but it's a Venn diagram. We all know this. Um, and you write things down and on each side as far as, okay, what is my emotion mind telling me? And what is my logic mind telling me? Emotion mind is going to be like, exactly what you would picture it being like. I'm trying to think. Let me just come up with an example of like getting on an airplane. Someone who's afraid of getting on airplanes. The emotion mind is, oh my God, I'm gonna be trapped on an airplane for this long. What if I have a panic attack? What if it's super bumpy? What if it crashes? Okay. Yeah, those can happen. The logic mind is completely shutting down those emotions and dismissing them, which we don't want to do either, and saying,
Mm.
well, that's not possible. That's not going to happen. You're being dramatic. You're going to get on the flight. It's going to be smooth. It's going to be easy. And you're going to get there and everything is going to be okay. That's kind of black and white thinking, right? Which is what DBT
Mhm.
wants to avoid. So DBT has this thing called the middle path or the wise mind. So right there in the middle, it's like, what are the thought patterns that we can use and reframe, merging the two, the logic mind and the emotion mind, because you never really want to be on one side or the other. A lot of people say, it's be logical about this. Okay. Well, also it's important to incorporate emotions as well. So the wise mind way to look at that is, okay, it might get bumpy. It might suck a little bit and you might have a little bit of a panic attack, but the odds of something actually happening that are going to be detrimental are really low. How can I prep for this, right? So that's this idea of dialectical behavioral therapy, is really walking the middle path, finding the balance between the two ways of thinking. And that just kind of helps with radical acceptance as well and making decisions.
Mm. That's so interesting how just the when you talk about black and white, your my initial thought would be like, just making decisions, black and white. But that's so true. It really is black and white when it comes to your logical mind and your emotional mind, and there's always a middle ground for everything we do, right? And going very strong on one side either way, what's the saying? Overdoing it overdoes it, or so
Oh, yeah.
overdoes.
Exactly. And we don't wanna do that 'cause it puts our equilibrium, out of balance, and it will keep your nervous system out of balance, right?
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about the nervous system and how people can tap into that and listening to their body and almost using the nervous system as a tool for decision making too. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think it's really important to listen to our nervous systems, and I also do want to just point something out because I do specialize in complex trauma, which is something that I'd love to dive into a little bit more. People with complex trauma really are struggling with nervous system regulation, and so I think what's really important to know, and oftentimes I think people with complex trauma feel an immense amount of pressure to have a regulated nervous system, right? Like if my nervous system is dysregulated, if things feel out of alignment, I have to fix it immediately. There's this sense of not being able to sit in it. So I first want to start out by saying that if your nervous system is dysregulated, it's okay. It's not like something that needs to be forced to be fixed right away. It's not another thing that should be put on your to-do list that can cause anxiety, stress, or pressure. It's something to notice and accept. Hey, I'm noticing that my nervous system is dysregulated. Ways that you know that your nervous system is dysregulated, one, kind of what we talked about, chronic illness is a big one, right? Noticing that you're getting irritated very easily. Maybe you're lashing out with loved ones, or maybe you're having really just quick responses before you're able to truly think things through. Talking fast is another one. Maybe not being able to complete tasks like you want to be able to complete tasks. You're not able to focus. Obviously, anxiety, depression, all of those things can be indicators that your nervous system is dysregulated. But for each and every person, it's going to be different. So I'm going to go back to this place of like really getting to know yourself, writing things down. I'm a huge promoter of doing some sort of documenting or journaling just to get to know yourself and your patterns, right? Like for me, I know that if I don't get sleep, the next day I need to be very intentional with how I manage my time because it can quickly spiral into not getting sleep that night. Maybe I get anxious and I start, making decisions based on fear instead of, truth and how I'm really feeling, right? So just getting to know yourself and putting that time and effort into knowing yourself will really help being able to know when your nervous system is getting dysregulated.
I love that. And so let's say somebody does notice it and they're like, okay, I can feel all of these things. Like I didn't get a lot of sleep. I'm feeling a little irritable today. Do you have some tools that they could use in the moment to help recalm their nervous
Yeah,
system?
absolutely. So going back to that dialectical behavioral therapy is really it's really about restructuring your thought process. And so it's taking us back to this radical acceptance. Radical acceptance is very huge in dialectical behavioral therapy and allowing people to really take a look at their thoughts and use that, wise mind, thinking to try to help because oftentimes I think when our nervous system is getting dysregulated, it's often coming sometimes from what's happening inside of our brain and how we're thinking and processing those thoughts. So doing that is going to be really, really important. There are tons of different, dialectical behavioral therapy tools that we can use, but I really, really think opposite action, even still in that moment, is super helpful. Of okay, what would I normally do in this situation? For example, some people like to binge eat or some people like to, drink alcohol. That's okay. There's no judgment here, but it's really about being like, okay, how can I intentionally flip the script? Like what is the quite literally the most opposite thing that you can do? Go to the gym, drink water, take a sip of water, do breathing exercises. I'm a huge proponent of journaling as well. I know that these sound very cliche, but journaling is probably one of the more grounding techniques that I've found to work for myself and a lot of people that I work with as well. But journaling intentionally.
hmm I definitely was one of those people who would go eat food, watch Netflix, just check out and forget about it. And when I flipped the switch and I just started walking all the time, not only did my mind become so much more clear, but I also
Mhm.
started losing weight. And that was a beautiful benefit of it too. And I wasn't even doing it for that. I
I
was just
love
doing it for like, I need to move this energy because a lot of times when you are feeling that contraction in your body. It's energy that's not being moved.
Mhm.
So if you can do anything physical to just move that energy through your body, whatever it may be, it doesn't have to be strenuous,
Yeah.
jump up and down a couple of times, do a couple of push-ups, like just even two, and you
Um,
already feel it moving. So I'd love to get your take on this because the stigmas of the world, right? And going against societal pressure and doing things that seem unconventional, like going back to school. How did you deal with that? And what were some of the ways you released these stories that are created around that are obviously not true, but we still kind of grab onto them sometimes?
I'm still working on that. But I will say it really helps surrounding myself with good and positive people. I really think that we are a product of who we're around in our environment. One of the reasons why I knew that I was growing out of alignment in my marriage was not having that support to move forward with what I was passionate about. And that really gave me a massive imposter syndrome about what I was doing. It really made me question myself. And when you spend a lifetime in a dysregulated nervous system and wanting to be chosen instead of actively choosing an alignment with yourself, there's always going to be this little thing in your ears, being like, well, what about this? And what are people going to think? Right. But that's again where I really come back to this. Okay. What are your morals? What are your values? And what is important to you? As long as you're living in accordance to that and whatever you're doing, as long as it is aligned to where you see yourself in 3, 5, 10, 20 years, that is the direction that you need to go, and just having that trust and belief that everything will fall into place. And I truly do believe, for the first however long it was, maybe 6 months, when I told people when I left before I was even back in school, I was not in sales anymore, right? So I wasn't able to be like, "Yeah, I'm in sales," and whatever. I was like, "I'm a caseworker right now. I work for a nonprofit, and, in my job, I go into people's homes, people that I don't know, and underserved communities, and I help them navigate their care plans," right? That's something that I think I should be proud of, but I would stutter getting it out of my mouth. You could tell that I did not feel confident in that decision to begin with. With time, that absolutely changed, but my advice would be find a way to be confident and believe in yourself with that. And it can take time. That's okay. But once you do that and you really take the time to get to know yourself and be like, this is why I'm doing it. Like, what is the why behind it? I'm doing this because this is what I want to do. And in 2 years, when this program is going to be done, if I didn't do it, I'd look back and be like, you would have already been done. You would have already been doing what you want to do. So there's not another minute that is worth being wasted. It's a couple years of my life. So that would
Mhm.
probably, I don't know if that was good advice, but I think that's what I would advise.
No, I think that was great, and a lot of times it is just it's our own minds.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it really is us against our own selves and the
Yes.
stories that we create, the boxes we put ourselves into, and then how tightly we hold on to those stories. I definitely can relate, and I think a lot of people can relate to when they leave a career behind. A lot of times, we unknowingly attach a bit of our identity to the work that we're doing when in the scheme of things there's so much more to us than just what we're doing to make money.
Right.
And I felt that too, leaving my tech sales career and going back to just doing all kinds of odd jobs that I just enjoy doing. But yeah, but you know what it was? Nobody was judging me for it. None of my friends, none of my family. The only person who was judging me for it was myself. And when I released that judgment on myself, oh my gosh, like
It's a weight lifted off, and I think another really good thing to point out too is the people who do judge you, you'll know and you'll see that and they will fall off. And that's a harsh reality, but it's also, I just think it's very important again, because when you're acting in alignment with yourself, you will see who you're naturally connecting with. Since I've made this decision, I have become so much closer with my friends, and I've actually made new friends that I feel like I probably would not have aligned with prior to making this decision. I'm meeting new people, I'm doing the things that, I want to do, but it really did make me think, okay, if I'm so worried about what people think, who am I worried about? Like, are there any
Mhm.
people in my life that I'm particularly worried about? Well, at that time, I was going through a divorce. I was like, how am I going to tell a guy I'm dating that I'm going back to school? Right. Like, so it came back to, okay, Well, you need to be confident in what you're doing, and you know that you're capable of taking care of yourself, and you've done this. You could go back to sales if you want to. You're choosing to do this. And so
Mhm.
just building that confidence, and I'll tell you what, I was really worried about it, has not been a concern at all. People truly value when people are in alignment and they're doing what they wanna do,
They
and they're doing
do,
their
and you
part.
know what's so interesting is, like, see, that was one of the stories. I had the same story of, "Oh
Yeah,
my gosh, like, when I start dating somebody, what am I
yeah,
gonna tell them that I'm just, like, in my mini retirement era?
yeah.
Like, what is this?" And then you have to think about, okay, if I met somebody and I, like, really liked them, I was attracted to them, and they told me they were so happy that they just quit this career and they have this dream they're going after, is there 1 ounce of my being that would be like, "Oh, boo, like, you're chasing
That's
a dream."
attractive.
No! Yes!
Well, to me, that tells me a lot of things. One, this person isn't going to fake it. Like, if they're around you and they're with you, it's because they want to, because if they don't wanna do it, they won't be there. So for me, that's like that's a green flag. They're acting in authenticity with themselves. The other thing I always like to think about too is who you're attracting again. So, like, a lot of the partners I attracted in the past were based off of the status that I had at that time, right? Well, now I'm attracting people, places, things, environments that actually align with who I am deep down and not this
Mhm,
part of me that, like, was never me. It was just something that I did, right? So
mhm,
it's good to know, like, okay, my friends are friends with me because they love me and they want to. My partner's with me because he loves me for me, not because of what I do for work. You know what I mean?
mhm, yep. But it's still we get in our head about that
Yeah.
stuff. So I'd love to know through this journey that you've been going on, have you felt like you have a stronger connection with your intuition?
Oh my gosh, yes. Now is it still hard to sometimes listen to it? Yes. And this is another thing that's very important. People with complex trauma know very, very well that it's very difficult to distinguish whether or not what they're feeling is coming from their past trauma and their maladaptive protection mechanisms, or if it's coming from their intuition. So it can get a little bit confusing there. But what I will say is that I have very much learned how to just make the decision. The decision or the thought that first comes to my mind is very likely the one that I wanna go with. Everything after that is me talking myself out of it, and I'm learning more and more, and I have learned how to just put an end to it and just stop it there. So absolutely, I've grown more in alignment with myself, and I certainly just, like, and I think this comes with age too. It's like I can see people and environments and see the beauty in everyone, but I
Mhm.
also know very quickly if someone is going to align with me or not. And I do not really, I have a very low tolerance of spending time with people that I feel like don't, that if it drains my energy, right? Like if something drains my energy, that is my cue number one. It's not good. I don't care if they're a great person, they're draining my energy and this doesn't feel right. So I don't need to explain anything else. That's my answer.
Mm, that is a very beautiful boundary, and I'd love for you to expand on that a little bit
Yeah.
because that's something that people struggle with a lot, where they feel,
Yeah.
women particularly, where they feel like what they're feeling isn't enough and they need to overcompensate for it. They don't want to be rude, they don't want to hurt people's feelings,
Mhm.
all of the things. So I would love for you to expand on that for us.
Yeah, I think it's the self-gaslighting that we really have to be aware of. I think we talk a lot about gaslighting. It's a term that's thrown around everywhere like a little hot potato, but
Yeah.
we're not thinking about how we are doing it to ourselves, especially as women. And so for me, this is something that I just think that I have grown into this space where I have learned that I respect myself more and others respect me more when I speak my truth and just say how I feel. Now, sometimes people do get intimidated and feel uncomfortable by it. And I'm not gonna lie and say that it's super easy, being a woman and being comfortable and standing in your truth. It's not always because some it makes people feel uncomfortable, men and women alike, right? Because women are put in boxes not just by men, but also by women. We know that. So
Mhm.
um just really being able to own that and for example, it's just not being afraid to say out loud, like, I think it's really important to own that we're all humans and humanity as a whole, and It's again this idea of dialectics and dialectical behavioral therapy. It's like, okay, I can see that this person is not a bad person. I can see that this person has a lot of amazing qualities. I could see why a lot of people would love to be around this person. There are, this, and this that are things that I have personally worked really, really hard to outgrow. And if I continue hanging out with this person, I am going to be abandoning myself and I'm going to be bringing myself back. I've already
Mm,
worked so hard to get to where I am. Why would I do that? So how I've handled that in the past is it's tough, but I believe in being direct and honest and just being like, "Hey, like, I think you're great. I just don't know if this is, either a friendship or a relationship that I can continue. It's nothing, personal with you, obviously. It's just where I'm at right now in my life." And I think the more as women that we get comfortable just saying that and letting that be okay is very, very important.
mhm. I feel like all of this is just about a journey back home to ourselves. And the
Yeah.
more comfortable you get with yourself, the easier these things do become because you realize just how important your energy and the way you feel becomes to you. Like you start to want to protect it. And you're like, but I feel so good, so I'm not going to put myself in situations where I don't feel good anymore. Nothing against you. Have a great day.
100%.
Mhm.
100%. I agree.
I do, and I do think it's an age thing. I do think it's, like, along the personal development journey as well. I feel like society as a whole is coming out of that autopilot. Like, a lot of us have just been in autopilot where, we weren't really learning about ourselves. We weren't really learning about the patterns, why we were acting the way we are, and people are waking up, and they're getting curious, and they're like, "Well, I don't wanna feel like this anymore. Why do I have this skin condition? Like, can I heal this myself?" I've spoken with multiple people on the podcast who have healed autoimmune diseases, and it all is about coming home to yourself, healing your nervous system. So do you have any like advice for the people listening who are
Yeah.
like excited and they're already feeling this and they're like, okay, like I'm ready?
Yeah, and thank you so much because that's when you were talking, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have so much I wanna say now." The having chronic illnesses and not living in alignment with ourselves, one thing that I've noticed is that, and I listen to Brené Brown. I mean, she's obviously great. Also, my therapist has, given me great advice on this, but oftentimes when you feel, like, frustrated or angry or, like, if you're getting those physical symptoms, right, of chronic illness, what are you avoiding being vulnerable about? Like, what are you afraid of? So it's like releasing that fear of whatever it is that you're protecting and just saying it out loud. And it's something that I've learned to do with, even my friends. I'm just very open to this point and very vulnerable and being like, you know what? This is something that happened to me today. And like, I'm not really proud of it, but like, I'm feeling really weird about it. Like, what do you think? And once you find how, when you're with the right people, only with the right people and right environments, how accepting people can be of the things that you're trying to suppress, you start to learn that it's nothing that you need to be afraid of. So I would always encourage people to tap into that vulnerability and just ask themselves like what they're not suppressing and what they're afraid of saying. That's exactly the thing that you need to say and do.
Absolutely. An intention of mine this year was to find safety and being vulnerable and goodness, the things that it has unlocked for me, it's really incredible. But again, you have to do that self-reflection of if a good friend of yours was coming to you and opening up to you, wouldn't you feel honored that they were choosing you as a person to open up to? And why would you think they wouldn't feel the same for you?
I mean, I love that you said that because this is something that happened to me recently. I had a new friend reach out to me and she shed a tear even and she felt like confiding in me and I just was like, "Thank you so much for doing that." Like that meant a lot. And so I think sometimes when we choose to not share how we're feeling with other people, it's I'm trying to find the right word. It's maybe not a disadvantage, but we're taking away the opportunity for other people to feel that joy as well sometimes. And if someone doesn't, respond in a way that feels great, that's just an example of like how they're managing things and, their own limitations. But I think that it can really strengthen relationships and bonds. I think it's really important.
It absolutely can, and a lot of times it unlocks a whole different layer of communication because now you have 2 people who are comfortable and the small talk is out the window. Now we're talking about real things, like,
Yeah.
how is your heart? What are you doing to heal your
Yeah.
heart when your heart starts to hurt?
Mhm.
Just these things that help us all grow exponentially as people, and what you put out as far as your energy, it truly does interact with every other person. So once you start working on yourself, not only are you healing yourself, truly you are healing the people around you. And
Mm.
you said just along this journey, you've already noticed your connections being stronger with your friends and you're feeling more confident and your trust in yourself has grown, your belief in yourself has grown. And what has that looked like for you to really step into this like version of you?
Yeah, no, I think that that's really important, for you to bring up. So, it looks different. It looks like being this is something I talk about a lot. Being in that new phase of your life is it can be hard. It's not sometimes the saying ignorance is bliss, right?
Hmm.
The more you know and the more you learn, the more that you can't ignore. The
Yeah.
less that you put up with, and the less that you, like, allow yourself to put up with, and you look in the past and you're like, "You know what? This would have been easier before because this wouldn't have bothered me so much because I wouldn't have known how damaging it is, for me or for someone else." So you are gonna be faced with more challenges, but the rewards far outweigh any sort of costs. Another thing that I wanted to mention that I thought was important to say for, anybody listening, if you're struggling with dealing with self-trust, if you're struggling with maybe people pleasing or struggling with setting boundaries or really speaking your truth, it really comes with starting within yourself. Acknowledging and looking around, like, how are you associating with other people who are maybe not trustworthy? Like, a really good example is if you want to trust other people, you first have to start with yourself, right? You have to first start with being a trustworthy person, being honest and living in truth, with yourself. But it really starts with those daily tasks of telling yourself, I'm going to do something and doing it. It can be something really, really, really small. Something as small as making your bed in the morning or drinking a glass of water is the first thing you do every morning and telling yourself you're going to do it and following through because that sends subconscious messages to your brain that you can trust yourself that this is safe. Another great example of this as well is when you're living in truth with yourself and you're not putting yourself in environments that are draining you, you're sending those subconscious messages saying that, okay, like I can trust myself. I am a safe person. And therefore, you will choose other safe people to be around. But if you're continually putting yourself in environments where they don't feel good, but you're going to keep doing it, you're never going to trust yourself or know how to tap into your own intuition, right? So it really starts with those little tiny, like micro decisions that you make every day.
Mm, I completely agree. And with a huge emphasis on the micro tiny things, because I had overall, I thought I trusted myself. But then there was like one particular area of my life, working out, where I did not, because I would always go way too hard, make way too big of commitments. Then I would hate it. I'd be sore and I never did it. So I really developed a belief of I could not trust myself with being consistent and working out. And when I just said, you know what? No, who cares? I'm just going to do what feels good to my body on a daily basis and I'm going to move it in whatever way. And then I got a habit tracker where I could actually really see with my own eyes how often was I doing the thing. And I was like, oh, wait, I was just going way too big. Of course I could trust myself, but maybe not
Exactly.
with something that huge. But the funny thing is, once you start with the micro things, the compound effect happens, the momentum builds, and you do start to trust yourself with bigger and bigger and bigger decisions. And it's
100%.
such a beautiful feeling to have that self trust in you. And it does take time to cultivate for sure.
Hmm.
For
Absolutely.
sure. So we're coming to the end, and I would just love for you to share anything else that's on your heart or your mind, any advice, any tips, tricks, any wisdom, knowledge, whatever wants to come out right now.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. It's been a lovely experience talking with you. You have great questions. But really, yeah, I mean, what I would say, and truthfully, a part of the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is I really want people to know that healing is absolutely possible. It's measurable, it's achievable, and there are evidence-based modalities out there like dialectical behavioral therapy that can really help. A lot of times people who struggle with complex trauma, it really does feel like there is not an end in sight. Like it's something that they're going to have to navigate, for the rest of their lives. And part of what is really helpful with this is not trying to fix. Like nobody's needs to be fixed. Nobody's broken. Like nobody is broken. I don't care what you're doing. You're not broken. It doesn't need to be fixed. What needs to happen is just learning how to sit with and navigate the feelings and things that are coming up for us. And I just want anyone out there who's thinking and feeling to themselves, why am I like this? Why can't I stop doing this? I just want them to be able to say to themselves, it's okay that I'm like this. Like, it's okay. There are reasons. The things that I'm doing protected me at one point in my life, and that is okay. Now, it doesn't serve me right now in a lot of different areas of my life. So how can I accept these darker portions of myself that I really am not proud of? How can I accept that and sit in it and say, okay, I have these feelings and I can act on them in these ways, or I can learn to accept them in these ways. But healing is possible, help is out there. And if you haven't looked into dialectical behavioral therapy, please do. It's very underrated, but it's one of the most evidence based and well researched treatment modalities that exists today.
That's so beautiful. And it's so important for everybody to realize that you are not broken, and you're not going on this healing journey to fix yourself. You're going on it to expand yourself and be curious about who can I become when I start to just unravel the bits of me that have created the life I'm currently living, and how can I use all of these tools available to me to recreate my life in alignment with myself, from joy, from happiness. And they're just believe that you can do it.
Well, and just like the podcast, just like the name of your podcast, every single day is an opportunity to recreate and change the direction. You truly do have a choice of, where how you want to, operate in your life and the type of life that you want to live. And it starts with those little micro decisions, but every single day you have a choice to do something like that. It's absolutely never too late.
It's never too late, no matter the age. No matter the age,
No
no matter
matter.
who you are, your background, it doesn't matter. You have the choice to recreate your life at any time you choose. This
Exactly.
has been an absolute pleasure,
Thank
Kaytlyn.
you.
Thank
It's
you
been
so
great.
much for this conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And for everyone who's listening, I hope you found a piece of yourself within this. I hope you learned some tools and some tips, and you have new information on a different type of therapy to look into. And go out there and make today your day, that you do something differently. And it could be a whole new path that you walk down. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
If you're feeling called to recreate your life in 2026 and not do it alone, I want to invite you into the Rise and Recreate portal. It's a community for people who are ready to release old patterns, reconnect to themselves, and consciously create what's next. Inside, we gather for guided ceremonies where we set intentions, we rewire our subconscious, and we have honest conversations, all designed to help you trust yourself, take aligned action, and actually build a life that feels like yours. Right now, you can join for half off your first month, so it's the perfect time to step in, get supported, and recreate your life alongside people who truly get it. You'll find the link below, and I would love to see you in there.